Then go to actually look at how transport across membranes actually works and what are the types of transport that we can have. We can have passive or simple, it's often called. Simple diffusion. But diffusion is always passive in the sense that it doesn't require energy, sorry, not enzymes. Passive or simple diffusion is used for small and non-polar molecules that can diffuse down their concentration gradients through the membrane. And they have to be non-polar or hydrophobic because they have to easily, as we said, be able to cross the hydrophobic core of the phospholipid tails in the cell membrane. If you don't remember exactly why phospholipid tails are hydrophobic, definitely revise that part of your syllabus quite well, your specification quite well, because it's really key to be able to understand the reasons why different molecules move into the membrane, through the membranes in different ways. We then have facilitated diffusion, which is diffusion again, right? So it's diffusion, so no ATP required. And again, molecules move down their concentration gradient. If it's diffusion, they're moving down their concentration gradients and they don't need energy. However, facilitated diffusion will utilize our channel or our carrier proteins and will allow slightly larger, it's not going to be an entire protein, but it can be an amino acid, for example. And polar, crucially, molecules or charged molecules, such as typical example of charged molecules, sodium or potassium ions. For those of you that have already done the year 13 content, you'll know that this is really used in neuronal communication, nerve impulses. So finally, we have active transport, which of course, as the name suggests, requires energy in the form of ATP. It uses carrier only, not channel proteins, and it uses energy that's derived from ATP, or more specifically from the hydrolysis of ATP. Super quick reminder, ATP switches between the states of ATP, where tri, 3 phosphates, and ADP, which has 2 phosphates. And it can move molecules against their concentration gradient. Super important qualitative difference between the two types of diffusion and active transport. And there are specific examples that it's good to remember for active transport. In plants, it's the uptake of minerals from the soil, if you want to make a quick note of that. Uptake of minerals from the soil, from the root hair cells. In the intestine, the absorption and uptake of glucose and amino acids. Let's see a typical question. Small nonpolar molecules move through the plasma membrane via simple diffusion. So this is my context. And it's also something that I'm not going to repeat in my answer, as we said before, from the examiner's reports. Outline the different ways. Outline is, of course, here my command words. The different ways that charged, polar, and larger molecules move through the membranes compared to small nonpolar molecules. Marks will reward it for quality of written communication. This is what I said, that sometimes it's explicit. It basically means that don't make your answer in bullet points like the mark scheme, actually write full coherent sentences. So my direction here. So my context is the movement of membrane of molecules through the membrane. My command is to describe, basically outline or describe. The only challenging thing I would say is that sometimes the word outline might actually mean describe, but always refer back to the exam technique session that we did in the beginning. And the direction, you focus on the 3 types of transport, sorry, I should say here, not molecules. Transport. Or the 3 types of molecules that move with the 3 different types of transport. And this is, of course, a 5 marker. So there's a little bit of information that we have to say here. So charged, polar, and larger molecules cannot use simple diffusion to cross the membranes. That is 1 mark. And again, when we say larger here, we don't mean proteins. Proteins move by an entirely different way. Endocytosis. Larger substances are transported using carrier proteins. That's another mark. You could have also said endocytosis here if you wanted. That would have been acceptable here. Over endocytosis. The process may use active transport. These processes may use active transport, moving substances against their concentration gradients. That is one mark mentioning that they're going against the concentration gradient, or also use facilitated diffusion down the concentration gradients. That is another mark. Polar and charged substances diffuse through channel proteins. That is a mark. By facilitated diffusion, or are transported by carrier proteins. By some mark. By either facilitated diffusion or active transport. Sorry about that. That's another mark here. Don't forget that in the mark that you're awarded for clear phrasing, spelling is also checked. So